Bro, I
Um,
just love the fucking archetypes, the 2K archetypes. Kevin Durant, all around threat.
I
John
like the
Morant, two-way play shot.
what is play shot?
It means like playmaker shot creator. I would not call him a shot creator. He's more of a slasher.
See if
Defensive.
they're
Whoa, wait. Go up.
on
Wait. Go down.
who?
Sabonis.
Oh,
Okay. Diming finisher. Chris Paul's a two-way slashing playmaker. Chris Paul's a play shot. He's not a slasher. He barely gets to
he's
the
not
rim.
a
He shoots
slasher at
like
all.
5% of his shots at the rim.
Yeah. Are there any other funny ones? Sadiq Bey is just shooter.
And then Barnes is a sharpshooter. How is Barnes a lower rating than Sadiq Bey? All right. Let's get into it. Let's just start from the top. Let's
Yeah.
start from the top. I want to see honestly. I want to compare this to my top. I made a top 30 list. The top 10 to 12 are pretty much set in stone as far as I'm concerned. Like there's a drop off after that point. There's a drop off after like the top 8. So it's Giannis, it's KD, Jokic, Curry, LeBron, Embiid, Doncic, and Kawhi. And then after that, there's a drop off because Tatum is not, in my opinion, on the same level as a healthy Kawhi Leonard. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. And I think that drop off could have been reflected a little bit more in the ratings potentially. I mean, how do you feel
Yeah.
about Tatum only being one less than Kawhi?
Well, it kind of begs the question of how they deal with players who missed the entire season, right? And it's a little bit inconsistent. I mean, Kawhi at a 94, I'm not mad about. I think if he's healthy, he's closer to a 90. Well, I think that's actually pretty reasonable. He's probably, when healthy, a 95 or maybe even a 90. He's probably the same level as LeBron and these guys. Honestly, though, I'm not sure how consistent they are in dealing with players who missed the season due to injury, and there's a question of whether they're going to come back at 100%, right? Because we had that same situation with Jamal Murray. He played half of the 21 season.
22. Right.
Yeah, and he was having a breakout year, shooting 48 from the field, 41
Yeah.
from three, 21 points per game, 4.8
Yep.
assists.
Kind of building on the momentum that he built up in the bubble.
Yeah, I saw a dramatic uptick in his efficiency. He was at 59 true shooting. And like take it with a bit of a grain of salt because this was the year where league-wide true shooting spiked and then it kind of fell back a little bit this past season with some of the officiating changes that we saw. So a lot of players' efficiency dropped slightly from the 21 to 22 season. But I mean, Murray in the 22 playoffs and the 21 season was a scoring machine. I think that you'd have to have him at like an 86, maybe an 87. I'm not sure. But I would imagine that his rating would be higher if he hadn't gotten injured.
I mean, here's the thing. Once you put him in the 86, 87 conversation, we're talking about guys like here. I'm looking at Garland right now, who's an 87, Dejounte Murray, who's an 86. I mean, do we think he was all-star level a couple years ago?
I think Murray was certainly on the same level that Garland was at last year, right? Well, maybe not because I think he's better overall than Dejounte Murray was last season.
I agree with Dejounte Murray.
A healthy Jamal Murray. With Garland, it's a little bit different because Garland is much more adept as a facilitator, as a playmaker. His passing is like a couple tiers higher in my book than that of Jamal Murray. Murray isn't really a traditional like distributing point guard. He's more of a scorer.
100%. That's why he benefits so much from playing with Jokic more than most guards in the league. Obviously, you have to have the skill to make the impact that he did, but just the fact that he's more of a score-first guard, but a guy that is good at playing off the ball, willing to move and cut, and you just saw how well he was playing off Jokic. Whereas somebody like Garland can kind of run an offense. I mean, we saw it last year. He's going to build on it this year. Obviously, they got Donovan, but he's still going to be the guy that, is the main playmaker in that offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Jamal Murray's scoring, it's like he could peak as a higher level shot creator than Garland. I don't think that if you put Garland on that bubble Nuggets team, that he would have averaged 27 points per game on 50, 40, 5, 90 in the playoffs. So I think that Murray's shot creation and kind of like the way that his scoring game scales against higher level defensive competition is something that Garland probably doesn't have, but Garland's floor raising is more impressive than Murray's. Yeah. Even though we haven't really seen Murray in that situation, but his passing does not sort of imply that he would be as effective there. But let's move on.
The final thing I'll say is, bump him up 1 or 2 ratings I'd be cool with, but an 84 is not like that's me being a little picky. An 84 is not like a huge deal for him, just considering how long he was out for,
what do you think about like the order of that top 8? Because I think we agree that like the top 8 is very competitive. There's 8 players that are MVP caliber right now in the NBA. Yep. It's Giannis, LeBron, KD, Embiid, Curry, Jokic, Doncic, and Leonard, assuming health. Beyond that, you have all NBA caliber players, but those 8 are like true MVP caliber. What do you think about the order that they have them in, with Giannis as the highest rated player, and then LeBron, KD, Embiid, Curry, Jokic, all as 96s? You're splitting hairs a little bit.
You got to be a little picky here. I would personally put Steph, Jokic, and Giannis all in the same rating.
I agree.
Just because that was the impression that I had, that just based off this past year, that they were all kind of in the same tier. LeBron is just it's tough, man, because of the Lakers situation last year. I think you can still put a lot of the blame on him defensively, because a lot of the Lakers dysfunction, I think most of the Lakers dysfunction came on offense. And we had already seen LeBron making defensive lapses kind of routinely, dating back to like 2018, 2019. I'd say more like 2019, once he already got to the Lakers. So I don't have an issue with him being 96. I would even say Luka is kind of on par at this point.
Yeah, I think that Luka, you can make an argument that Luka is on a higher level than LeBron and KD after, not only what we saw this past season and this past playoffs, but it's clear that like you're seeing the limitations of what LeBron and KD can do in terms of energy level and conditioning at this stage in their careers. Like KD just can't necessarily impose his will defensively or get to the rim as easily as he used to. And with LeBron, obviously he's still spectacular on offense, but his defense has slipped considerably. I don't think that you'd ever see a LeBron James team in, prior to 2017 that's bottom 10 in defense. I mean, the Lakers were just bad offensively and defensively, and a large part of that is because of Anthony Davis's health. A large part of that is because they don't have the role players or the shooting or the athleticism that they need to surround LeBron with. They don't have a secondary playmaker aside from Westbrook, who's turnover prone
he's
and completely redundant with LeBron's strengths. I mean, everything that Russell Westbrook does at an above average rate, LeBron does at an MVP caliber. So there's just nothing like there's no value that you can really extract from Westbrook when he's on the court with LeBron, except to take for LeBron to take a few offensive possessions to catch his breath while Westbrook bricks a bank shot.
Is he going to be worse this year than last year?
Absolutely.
Can it get worse?
Well, I think it can get worse. I was really surprised at the report that Darvin Ham promised Westbrook the starting position, even though they have Beverly now, who's a much more natural fit next to LeBron and AD.
Yeah,
given the fact that he can space, he's a better defender.
Yo, that's so funny that they're the exact same rating. I went down to Westbrook because I knew he was a 78 overall, but I didn't see Beverly. when I was going through the list. That's so funny that they're right next to each other. They have
And
to
it's
have
one of
done
the
that on purpose.
and it's one of the longest standing beefs in recent NBA memory between when Westbrook tore his meniscus, right? And it was Beverly that dove onto his, or like it was a knee-to-knee collision with Beverly. And then just this past season, when the Lakers played the Timberwolves, and they were just outright disrespecting Westbrook the entire game, not even bothering to guard it. Like whether it was Cat, Edwards, Beverly, they weren't even bothering to guard him on the 3-point line. They were just like they would wave him off when he had an open corner three, pretend to close out to him, and then just start running back on defense before he even took the shot. And then they were like, it was like the stink sign, like the PU, like you smell like ass. Like every time you break the shot, they would be like, you stink. The fact that they're on the same team now does not bode well for Westbrook's future in LA. I think that they want to trade him, and I think that he wants to be traded. That's what all the reports say. But
Nobody's taking their offers. That's what I've heard.
They have to give up at least one first-round pick in order for a team to be willing to take Westbrook's contract. He's owed what, $50 million next year?
It's the worst contract in the NBA. He's the second highest paid player behind Steph Curry.
Yeah, but another casualty of the Supermax.
I wanted to get to Westbrook. I mean, I was going to get to him later because I thought we would kind of go in descending order of overall ratings, but we tend to skip around, which is not necessarily a bad thing. This is still too high.
What is he, a 78?
Yeah, this is still too high. I'm sorry. It is. Paolo Banchero is already better than him. Dorian Finney-Smith is better.
They have Rubio above him.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
Jabari Smith. They have Kuminga above him.
Kuminga is the same rating I have here. What do you think about that?
So I think this kind of gives us the segue that we needed to talk about like the philosophy of a 2K rating, right? Because what exactly is the criteria for a player's 2K rating? Is it how much value the player adds in terms of winning? Is it championship equity? Is it the value that a player adds over a replacement level player? Because it seems to be weighted towards certainly offense and particularly floor raising. So high volume offense, players that can sort of carry the load, even if they're not necessarily all that efficient or all that effective at carrying a heavy load offensively or a high offensive burden, right? Because you have a player like Terry Rozier that's one rating below Mikal Bridges, right? 1 point below Mikal Bridges. Or wait, just go up here to where Mikal Bridges
okay.
is.
Yeah, let me go up to that because I
think the RJ Barrett example is the perfect one. The fact that you have RJ Barrett above Desmond Bane, above Mikal Bridges, I mean even above Jordan Poole, Jalen Brunson. There's just no. I don't think any GM or serious NBA analyst would say that RJ Barrett right now gives you more winning equity, right? Helps you win more than Desmond Bane or Mikal Bridges or Fred VanVleet or Jalen Brunson.
That was ridiculous.
Or Draymond Green.
Fred VanVleet's an 83? Are you kidding me?
Even Marcus Smart. You have a defensive player of the year that's below RJ Barrett. And RJ Barrett, like even if you take his best, I think that like the play type that he was used in the most this past season was pick and roll, and he's in like the bottom 30th percentile. He's like 29th percentile in pick and roll efficiency.
This is just points per possession.
It's just points per possession. And that's sort of the way that he's conceptualized by most fans as like a playmaking slasher who has the ability to use his strength and his athleticism at that 6'7" frame to get downhill and either finish or set up his teammates, he's just not effective at that. And so he might have averaged 20 points per game, but if you put RJ Barrett on the Memphis Grizzlies and you like if you traded Barrett for Desmond Bain straight up, or if you traded Barrett for Jordan Poole straight up, or Klay Thompson or Marcus Smart, the other team gets worse every time. You trade Barrett for Mikal Bridges, the Suns are suddenly way worse. Barrett's game does not scale with higher levels of talent around him. He's not a winning player. And he might be able to he might be able to give you 20 points per game and whatever, 3.5 assists on 51% true shooting. But that is not moving the needle for any competitive team that has a shot at making the playoffs even. So I don't know how that can justify an 84.
Absolutely.
And don't get me wrong, like I don't like I like the platonic ideal of RJ Barrett. Like I like his potential. I think that he has a good foundation to continue to improve, to build on, but he's not a winning player at this stage in his career. And you can't put him above guys that have proven that they can contribute on championship caliber teams.
Absolutely. Kind of on a similar note, right next to RJ Barrett is Tyler Hero at an 84. Grossly overrated. How is he the same rating as Halliburton? How is he one higher than Bane, like you said? One higher than Mikal Bridges? How is he one higher than Fred VanVleet? That just doesn't make any sense. In addition, the archetype that they gave Tyler Hero is laughable. A versatile offensive force.
I think that's just algorithmic. Like, does someone actually sit there and like assign those archetypes to players? There's no way. Like, if you mess with their ratings, I'm pretty sure that it changes the archetype that it assigns them.
Right. You know what I think it is?
Mm-hmm.
So in real life, obviously we know he's not like he's not even an above average passer, but they probably give him like a good ball handling rating. And so the playmaking rate, because like they have the umbrella categories and playmaking is one of them. And within playmaking, there's probably ball handling, passing, so the ball handling rating he gets probably moves the needle enough to make him a versatile offensive force, according to the algorithm.
Well, let's talk about some players that are underrated, some players that got done dirty.
Yep.
By the 2K ratings. So number one, I thought Jaylen Brown should have been higher than an 87. You have guys at the same level as Jaylen, like LaMelo Ball, frankly, Bradley Beal and Darius Garland being the same rating as Jaylen Brown surprised me. And I think that, with Garland, at least there's an argument because Garland can probably be the engine behind at least a league average offense. And I'm not sure if that's the case with Brown, but Brown's defense and the resilience of his scoring against very high level defenses that we saw in the playoffs. He was a more effective scorer against Golden State than Tatum was. And to have LaMelo Ball above him or with, the same rating as him does not make any sense. LaMelo Ball is like a hugely net negative defender. And we just haven't seen him in a winning situation. Again, I have a problem with putting players that have never, been shown to be effective in like a playoff scenario ahead of guys who have a proven track record of scaling their offense and being able to fit in a high level playoff team. So frankly, even having like Levine and Gobert above Jaylen is pretty questionable to me. I don't know how you can have, honestly, I'm not sure how you can have Kyrie Irving and James Harden to have them above Jaylen Brown.
Why is Harden an 89? It's ridiculous. That's the player we should be comparing to Jaylen. How is he 2 higher ratings than Jaylen? That doesn't make any sense.
It's outrageous. It's kind of like the opposite of recency bias. It's like anchoring bias. Like anchoring It's like anchoring like Harden's rating to the player that he was 2 to 3 years ago.
Yes.
He was not an all-star caliber player last year.
Definitely not.
Certainly not an all NBA caliber player.
No.
He couldn't score efficiently. Obviously, he can't defend. Like again, like they play the same position, right? Just take the thought experiment. Replace Jaylen Brown with James Harden on last year's Celtics. They get probably 5 wins worse. Like it's a huge drop off. And that Celtics team was lacking in playmaking and shot creation. And you would think, based on Harden's player profile, based on his archetype, that those would be areas where he would move the needle for the Celtics. But he's not that player anymore. He averaged 22 points per game on 41% from the field, 33% from three. In the playoffs, his points per game and his assists per game dropped significantly. Obviously, they got bounced in the second round. He's not the scorer that he once was. He doesn't have the first step. He's not able to get to the rim. He doesn't put pressure on the rim. His ability to create those step back threes is not there like it used to be because his slashing game isn't the threat that it used to be. Right. And the free throws dropped off a cliff in the postseason. Crucially, right? Like I think he was averaging 8 free throws a game during the regular season, 8.2.
Mm-hmm.
That went down to 6 free throws a game in the playoffs. Points per game, 22 in the regular season, 18 and a half in the playoffs. Assists per game, 10.3 during the regular season, 8.6 in the playoffs. He shot 43.9% from 2 in the playoffs. He's not able to finish at the basket anymore.
Yeah, the athleticism coupled with the fact that the NBA got a little bit stingier about calls that that he would get more often in the past. Mm-hmm. They've just had a huge, a dramatic effect on his offense as a whole. And we know his defense has never been amazing, and it's gotten even worse as he's aged. So
what do you think about Harden? I mean, he just turned 33. He's not really at what you'd call an advanced age relative to this era, but obviously his game is predicated on his ability to really get by the initial defender out of isolation sets with that first step, just basically his acceleration from a dead stop, right? Because he hits his defender with that size up package, and then whether he just hesitates and blows by to his left or crosses over and drives to his right, like it's the speed of that first step that really opens up everything else for his offense, right? And then it's the threat of that first step that opens up his step back three. And his ability to put pressure on the defense is really a product of that first step, the ability to beat his defender off the dribble and then suck the defense in so that he can hit kickouts. After the Rockets traded Capella, it really became a radical heliocentric drive and kick offense. And that's always been Harden's strength as a player, and also part of the reason why, the style of play has been called, a little bit, frankly, one-dimensional at times. And I have to say, I agree with that assessment. But do you think that Harden at this point in his career, because when I think of Harden, I think about that ability to just, at whatever, like 220, 215 pounds, 6'5", 6'4", 6'5", to just go from 0 to 100 really, really quickly. And do you think that he can get back there, or are the days of prime Harden just a thing of the past? You think that if he loses some weight, if he gets in better shape, he improves his cardio, do you think that he can get back to some approximation of what we saw in 2020?
No, I don't think so. I think what's also contributing here is that Philly kind of wants to go, they're already going in a certain direction because of the development of Embiid, Maxey now. I don't think they're expecting Harden to get back to close to that level, nor do they even think that that's the direction that they want to go in, given the other players on the team, namely Embiid. And I think Harden, since the Thunder days, has been the best shot creator on the team, on his team for so long that we already saw his performance start to drop off when he started playing with KD and Kyrie.
Yeah.
So it's so tough to to change your style of play after so many years of playing such a radical style, like you alluded to. So no,
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get close to 2018.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's a very similar phenomenon to what you see with Westbrook, just the inability to change your style of play that late in your career when you've played a very peculiar way, frankly, for the majority of your career for like 10 years or more. You just have complete, like, the green light all the time to make whatever you want out of an offensive possession. And there's very little structure. There's very little X's and O's in that sort of D'Antoni offense. And I think that part of what you're seeing with Harden, first of all, I do want to make note of the fact that, like, with Harden and Embiid, Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer has pointed out ad nauseum that Harden and Embiid are the most efficient pick and roll duo in the NBA. And Harden's passing has unlocked some aspects of Embiid's offense that we weren't really able to see prior to Harden arriving in Philly, where the ability to get him the ball out, in deep post position, hitting Embiid diving hard to the rim, getting Embiid some easy pick and pop, wide open threes at the top of the key. You really didn't see that as much before Harden got there, and I think it's worth noting. The problem is that there's not enough shot creation. Like, Harden's game just isn't designed to age as well as some other, like, pick and roll maestros. Like, if you think about a guy like Chris Paul, Harden doesn't have that diverse bag of counters that can make up for losing a step. He doesn't really have that ability to, like, create his own shot in the mid-range, in the floater area, out of the pick and roll, that a lot of other, like, more traditional point guards do. He just never really developed that because he never really had to, because he was playing isolation heavy style of basketball. So that, like, those types of counters never really developed. And it's unfortunate now because he's just not able to play in that way anymore, because obviously he's lost a step and now he's not the best player on the team anymore. Were there any other moving on from the Harden thing, is there anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, just real quick. Speaking of floor raisers, like you alluded to, being a little bit overrated in 2K for whatever reason. Also, traditional bigs are kind of overrated, like, kind of across the board. The most obvious one is Andre Drummond being a 79. Don't you think that's a little high?
I didn't even see that. That's ridiculous. The guy was like
he's one rating lower than Anthony Simons.
Anthony
Simons is too low, by the way.
Less than 8 points per game. I saw that. Yeah, I agree.
I thought that was ridiculous. Jonas Valanciunas is also, I think, a little bit too high. Wendell Carter is too high.
What do you think is a reasonable rating for a guy like Clint Capella? I actually like. So what's Wendell? What
83?
They have him at an 83. I think an 83
Keep in mind,
is a little bit high, but
same
Wendell
rating
is
as
pretty.
McHale.
Well, I think that's more of a problem of McHale being underrated than Wendell being overrated. I do think that Wendell is, frankly, pretty well-rounded and skilled for a center. He has the ability to a little bit. There's a little bit of playmaking from the top of the key, but I agree. I think Clint Capella as an 84 is probably a little bit high, but I think what they're looking at is, like, the production on a per minutes basis. So if you look at, like, the PER for some of these, like, sort of traditional, like, energy bigs, like Capella or Andre Drummond, like, Capella had a 21.4 PER this past season. And I don't think he's the defender that he used to be, the rim protector that he used to be. But these guys that just grab rebounds and rim run, the efficiency typically looks really good on paper. So I see how they can get there, but the issue is more that, like, this skill set is, and it's something we talked about on the draft pod with Jacob, right? Like, that skill set is relatively replaceable. Like, it's just pretty easy to find players that can approximate a lot of the things that Clint Capella does. Running in transition, grabbing rebounds, and Capella is a particularly outstanding offensive rebounder. So that I don't think is necessarily replaceable. But I mean, like, put any like replacement level big man on the court for 28 minutes a game with Chris Paul, and they'll put up those numbers.
But there aren't many guys like Chris Paul, so
that's true.
I don't think that's totally fair. Yeah, maybe. Actually, I
Darius
I think
Garland.
I was being a little bit picky with.
Yeah, Darius Garland, Trae Young.
Yeah, I get it. It's one of the more replaceable archetypes. Maybe I was being a little bit picky about Wendell at 83, but I don't think Valanciunas should be an 83. Anyway, are there any other players that I thought were no? Besides, like I said, Westbrook's still too high at 78. Sorry, 2K. Devin Booker is another one that I wanted to talk about at a 91. I also think that's too high.
That's way too high.
Yeah.
And again, like going back, not to belabor like the Jaylen Brown point, but just to take Jaylen, because there's a 4-point difference between Booker and Jaylen. Just compare their playoff stats. Like literally just compare their playoff stats from this past season, even their regular season stats, right? Obviously Booker played on an extremely effective regular season team that won over 60 games, but his scoring numbers across the board are very, very similar to Jaylen's, and Jaylen is a significantly better defender.
Do you think the playmaking moves the needle enough? I don't really.
It's obviously an improvement.
Yeah,
it's better than Jaylen's passing.
It just shouldn't be not a 4-point difference.
I think you could make the same argument with Paul George too. For Paul George to be an 88, and then Booker is 3 points ahead of him.
Oh yeah, and I don't even mind having PG1 overall higher than Jaylen. So
yeah, me neither.
By that logic, Devin Booker doesn't make sense. But those are the main guys that stood out to me. Any final thoughts?
Trying to see if there were any other ones that shocked me, but there's not everything. I think most of the ratings were pretty within the realm of what I expected.
Hero shocked me, to be honest. That might have been the biggest shocker.
Hero at 84.
Yeah,
but I think again that speaks to the criteria that 2K has for their ratings. Like they clearly like players who can kind of score in bunches. Especially they like these Jamal Crawford type players, that can put up points and kind of put score 18, 20 points, but guys that are in that range, right? The average 18, 20 points per game, especially wings, they tend to be overrated in 2K.
I get it, but by that logic, why is Anthony Simons an 80? OG not in the same archetype, but why is he 3 overall ratings lower?
So I think it's because of the ball handling, right? It's if you give certain players a bump for their ball handling, even if it doesn't necessarily right, because aesthetically you might you watch a player like Hero and you think, okay, he's a much better ball handler than OG Anunoby. And even though Anunoby is a much better defender, even though Anunoby is probably more efficient as a scorer, I would think it's probably pretty close between them. I don't know who shot the ball
OG's
better,
a more efficient scorer. Hero's better on volume, obviously.
But I mean, OG we would think of as a more valuable, he would have more value as a trade asset because he's so much better as a defender, and because of his size, he can guard multiple positions, right? But these 2K ratings don't take into account things like that, like size, archetypal value. So in a vacuum, 2K is taking into account skills that don't necessarily translate to more value as a player, like ball handling finesse, OG doesn't need to handle the ball in the same way that Hero does, right? Because that's not his role. But if you did put OG into that role of a 6-man scoring spark plug off the bench, he wouldn't be effective. But at the same time, Hero can't.
He would still be pretty
because he can't defend.
OG would still be pretty effective. He averaged 17 a game this past year. Can you believe that?
He also averaged 36 minutes a game though.
True. Yeah, the Raptors starters tended to get a lot of minutes last year.
They didn't
Even
have,
Scotty.
yeah, they had like a 7-man rotation.
Yeah, my mistake. OG was a little less efficient than Tyler last year.
Mm-hmm.
But the year before, it was kind of a. I think OG will regress back to the mean. Let's see where he kind of dropped off this past year compared to the year prior.
More like rise back to the mean. Yeah, his shooting numbers were down from what they were
threes,
historically.
twos, and free throws.
I think honestly the durability is kind of a major concern for him at this point. He just hasn't been able to stay on the court. It's kind of like Robert Williams. Like he's always dealing with some nagging injury. I hope he can stay on the court.
Yeah, that's actually something that I overlooked a little bit. I knew that he had. I think he has a little bit of an injury history dating back to college as well. I was not aware that he missed 30 games last year. That is pretty crazy. Anyway, I'm done with the 2K ratings.
Yeah, let's put this to bed.